4, 3, 2, 1. Earth below us, drifting, falling, floating, weightless, calling.
Okay, so today we're following Dariant as he plays some 3-minute games here, and I like the way Dariant plays. I've seen some interesting moves from him in some other Blitz games recently, and I thought we could kind of watch him today to see if maybe together we can learn something from this guy. I realize his rating's a little bit lower, but he does have some good ideas in the openings, and he's had some neat tactical ways to get back into games I've seen him play. I haven't really commented too much on this game so far because pretty balanced position and not really anything too exciting. I will say, if you look at the position right now, that pressure on c4 is uncomfortable because black has moves like maybe knight into e4 right now, for example, where okay, and white's covered it now, but a minute ago, if the black knight had come to e4, the white knight couldn't have captured it due to the rook on a1 hanging, so could have been a nice little tactical shot there to maybe get something, but with bishop to b2 now, you know, white's able to cover it pretty well. So okay, that knight there is threatening to come into b4. Expect to move like a3, and I think part of Dariant's problem is he just moves a little bit too slow in these 3-minute games. He tends to get into some serious time trouble, and then that time trouble ends up costing him in the game, but he's actually got usually a good position. The last opponent he played was a 1700 guy, and he led through a lot of that, and now he's going to find himself in trouble. After the queen retreats here, yeah, I guess he's got the knight protecting that pawn, so he's okay there, but still think b4 would have been a better idea, just keeping the knight out. So now Dariant's next move would be like knight to a4 here to win the knight on b4 is kind of the idea, so black should make a move like a5 or something of that nature to give support to that knight. Otherwise he might find himself losing a piece on the next move, so yeah, a5, see, to cover the knight, because the attack of the knight there on a4 would have won that piece. So white continues with his plan, and it looks like that queen's getting separated from the knight, which is going to drop a pawn anyway. So this is like why I like this guy Dariant. He tends to find ways to win material, so he should be up a pawn here. And he's actually, in this particular game, got a time advantage. The opponent took a long time there trying to solve that problem of the knight to a4 threat. Okay, so knight to e4. Dariant should be happy to exchange here when you're ahead in development and pieces, or sorry, leading pieces rather. You should exchange, because as the game goes on, that lead will get magnified as less pieces are on the board. That was a wise retreat. Queen to d2 would have allowed maybe a rook pin with like rook d8 or queen over, something like that. So this is good to retreat. Now black should be looking for some counterplay. Threatens the a pawn. Okay, it just brings the queen maybe to a more natural square. Maybe now bishop to g4 Bishop g4 threatening the knight I thought would have been a good idea, because then if the bishop captures the knight, the pawn would have to capture to hold the a pawn, so you kind of work both sides of the board that way. And if I was white, I'd be considering a move like a4 here, or soon, because a4 would stop the exact idea that now is getting played. So if the queen captures, that a pawn falls, so exactly the idea I mentioned is playing it out here. So now black's down a pawn, but he's got a lot better bishop than white's bishop there. As you know, you can see the pawns on the queen's side restricting white's bishop. The pawn on f3 is restricting that bishop. So I would have liked f5 there for black a little bit better, just to keep that bishop completely out of play. Now I feel like white's getting a little bit easier game. Maybe like bishop to e4, and the bishop retreats sooner or later here. Maybe queen to f3 first, and then bishop to e4. But still feel like white has a good game here. Again, a4 would take the pressure off that a2 pawn, so maybe black here should be playing moves like rook to a3 to keep that pawn where it's at and build up some pressure over there. I'm not sure what h5 accomplishes here. Okay, well now h5 I can give some credit to, because the g3 square is weak, so if a move like h5 gets played, You can't attack with your queen alone though. I feel like black's just going in with his queen right now. He needs to get those rooks active if he's gonna, truly threaten something in this position. Okay, rook over to d8. Fight for control of the open file. Whoever controls this file will have a slight lead in the position. When you have bishops opposite color, you're going to want to look to have the attack. Whichever side is attacking, when there's bishops opposite color, that side tends to have a better game. So you want to make your bishop active. You want to make sure you're creating threats towards the king side. And in this position, because of the locked up pawns being the way they are, not much is going to come of that. And of course, the time situation here, 12 seconds, we're not going to see a beautiful attack necessarily. Probably it's just going to be a boring position that looks more drawish than anything else, and then time is going to cause the side to win or lose. Looks like black here, recognizing the time issue, is just going to let the time go. So, okay, maybe not the most educational game, but I hope you learned a couple ideas there. Again, if you got opposite colored bishops, make sure you're using your bishop to go ahead and attack your opponent, because if you got that attack, it's always going to be helpful. And we'll just continue to follow Dariant here to see what else we can learn today from his game. So, okay, so we got a Sicilian, and can look for black here, maybe to get control on the c file. There are ideas of maybe playing a rook over to c8 later on in these openings, especially when white castles queen side, and the rook there on c8 could maybe exchange for the knight on c3 to create some weaknesses over there. I can already tell from the way white's playing though that he or she I should say, has no intention of castling queen side, because when you play your pawns forward in the side you castle to, that's usually just a bad strategy. So I would expect here white's going to castle king side. And then with that being said, it's interesting that white has developed so many queenside pieces when the player's most likely anticipating going kingside on the castle. So pausing for a moment here to figure out how to hold that knight there. Queen up seems reasonable. Allow black to give the bishop. Now there's a bit of a trick here. If bishop takes f3 check, pawn takes, and the knight takes e4, the queen captures on e4, there'll be a check on c3 to win the rook on a1. So okay, they're not going to that variation, but hope you're able to see that. Just the idea of maybe bishop takes knight, pawn takes, the knight capturing the pawn, the queen taking the knight. The black queen would have checked on c3 and won the rook on a1, so that was a nice little threat there. Okay, so not really too much happening here. I mean, there's possible double pawn on the b file still, but black needs to be careful here, not to, for example, yeah, this is gonna be interesting. If black would have retreated the bishop, there's always ideas of one of those knights coming to b5 with the queen there, or some other piece on the d file piling up on that bishop, and you end up having like a sacrifice to win well, give a piece to get a piece kind of thing. But okay, so white, that was interesting. White brought the black queen closer there, and then castled once the queen was closer. It was maybe just knight to d7 here, and then knight to e5, alright, or going for straight, I usually like to, before I push pawns in the center multiple times, with e6, e5, I tend to want to develop my pieces, but if black sees maybe he's got an idea here, bishop f5 seems like a reasonable move here, putting pressure on c2, and again, these two-minute games are not going to have perfect play, obviously, but just trying to get some ideas out there for you to think about in your own games. And queen over to g3. Okay, so you take that queen, maybe double white's pawns, but I don't think that's much of an advantage. So black decides to go for it anyway, but he's about 20 seconds behind on time here, so he needs to start moving a little bit faster. Again, that's been the problem. And that idea for white I don't think was the best one. I think maybe rook to c1 was a better idea, because putting the bishop there, black could actually exchange there and create a weakness on d3. That d3 pawn would have no other pawns to support it, so it'd be isolated. White would have 3 sets of pawns. Yeah, I would have quickly captured that bishop on d3 if I was black, and played a rook over to d8 and began to build up pressure on that weak pawn. So now rook to d8 would actually be a good move also, though, because then if bishop takes the knight, the other bishop's hanging. Yeah, he sees that idea. So, and white wisely guards the piece. So maybe like f6 here, be a move I'd consider. Just trying to keep that bishop there on e6 comfortable. Now white can make a move like knight to g5 with a double attack, one on the bishop on e6 and also on the h7 pawn, but instead opts to attack the bishop from the other side with knight to c5, so which also attacks the b7 pawn. Okay. Kind of like white's position here. It seems like there's going to be some natural play on the queen side to get those. White has a queenside pawn majority, so when you have that, you want to push your majority to create a passed pawn on that side of the board, and white seems to have pieces placed in very good positions to help get those pawns rolling forward. And typically when you're playing against your opponent's majority, you wouldn't push a pawn like black just did, because that allows that majority to get rolling a little bit faster. Okay. That was kind of a neat idea, able to win a pawn, so there's maybe some tricks there. And again, Dariant, a lot of times I don't right away see the ideas he has, but he does have some good ones. So, well, I think he just got mated. Rook to c8 looks to be checkmate. Well, the rook can move in the way, but that's game. So yeah, you got to make sure you watch your back rank too. Another good lesson to take from this. So again, today we're just going to kind of follow through some games, and as they're getting played, I'll give you some commentary, and hopefully that commentary helps you think about things during your own game. So, got a queen pawn opening now. And looks like a queen's gambit, and then with f5 being played inside of it. So, kind of a stonewall type position. And in the stonewall, the side that plays for that ends up with this pawn situation like you have here on e6, f5, and d5. And so the light square bishop, obviously, for black isn't very active. But all of the other pieces, the knight on b8, the bishop on f8, those pieces can really fly into action here. So you can have maybe like a bishop get to d6 like it is right now, the other knight come into d7 to support this knight, and then one of those knights eventually could advance forward to e4, the queen could come out to like f6, and the king could castle, and then you notice how like almost all of those pieces then would have an influence on the king side of the board, king side of the board for white. So essentially, when you're playing with this, you're playing a very aggressive opening. What white did there by exchanging the pawn there on d5 actually helps black bring his pieces into a much more active role here. So really, white needs to be careful because he's really activated a lot of black's pieces. And okay, so he's going to go after this. It's well known that in this particular structure, if you play a4, b4, and b5, you do get a nice little attack on the queen side that can cause some weaknesses and stuff over there, but those weaknesses won't matter if white ends up getting mated. So moves like f4 now for black, with that bishop on the light squares, then being able to possibly exchange for white's light square bishop would be good. And looks like white's getting in almost in time to attack on c6, right? So bishop d7 is going to be possible in a moment to help hold that pawn, and then maybe the other rook can come into the game. But you see how all of black's pieces are kind of shifting to the king side very naturally, and that's something you'll see a lot when you play this the stone wall or that kind of opening. And again, that's why if you're playing against the stone wall, you really don't want to exchange on f5 or d5 and allow your opponent's light square bishop to come in so naturally over there. Looks like black just gave up a pawn on f5. I'm not sure why. The bishop was covering that a minute ago, and the queen there could have captured on f5. Apparently white's going after something else, but that pawn is hanging. So okay, so black maybe noticed that and now covers that square, so f5 is no longer threatened, and also the knight's got a little bit better position as well. The bishop for black really shouldn't be on that side of the board, though. He really should have been playing, like I said, for f4 earlier, and then the idea of like bishop to h3 trying to exchange off that light squared bishop with black's pawns being in the center like they are. You'd want to not have the bishop that is on the same color as your pawns in the center of the board. That tends to limit that bishop's mobility. So right now that bishop's playing on the queen side of the board. If the bishop were needed on the king side, it would be difficult to navigate that light squared bishop over there, so it's a bad bishop in this position. Whereas that dark squared bishop for black, that now is pinning a knight on b2, black should not look to exchange that bishop. In fact, I don't think black's playing a very consistent theme here. He really should be, like I said, attacking on the king side, and now we see white saying, you know, hey, look, I can just go ahead and take this because I'm getting a pawn for the exchange, and now maybe even more. He's going to have a check here with queen recaptures. Then he can casually move the rook. so he just won a pawn there. Really the only way to challenge black with that was to actually, or for black to challenge I should have said, was just play bishop takes rook as an intermediate move after the knight captured. But now I really like white's position. It seems like black's falling apart. That bishop on g2 is going to have a attack all the way to that rook there on a8, so that pawn might become, yeah, this is getting dangerous for black. See what PC recaptures with here. Yep, and so the double attack, both rooks are threatened. Rook on a8 is threatened by the bishop, rook on e6 is threatened by the knight. And you can also see that that bishop on a3 is also going to fall soon, because rook up to, I guess b3 doesn't work because the knight's covering it, but the bishop does have very limited squares. So it looks like rook c3. Yeah, rook to c3 looks to win the bishop right now after this rook. So rook c3 should be the move. Okay, just double up on the knight, but again, rook c3 would have, that bishop didn't have any squares, so. And the knight moves in, and remember f5 looks like that's still hanging again, so that's an option for white to capture with either the knight or the rook. Chooses to capture with the knight. And black's just hoping for maybe just to meet the time here. And again, Dariant playing a great game, nice advantage. But time-wise, look at that. 26 seconds left on the clock, and might still be able to get a mate in here. There's definitely mating potential with that knight and the rooks working together if he doubles his rooks right now. Okay, and rook takes. I would have doubled first, but and that bishop holds the other rook off the second rank, so Dariant's winning pawns, but he's down 30, or he's got 15 seconds compared to 30, so really in this situation mate's got to be what he's going after, and he's not doing that currently, so better there was rook to a4 hitting the knight with the bishop also threatened at the same time. I'm not even sure how black would have been able to meet that threat, but oh well. And I think, yeah, that was horrible. Black actually had rook to c8 followed by rook takes knight a minute ago, I think, or something of that nature. This still works though, so check. Okay, so white's got the material, but somehow he's got time again too. Okay, so that'll conclude this video. I hope it helps you out in your future games and stuff, and gives you some more things to think about as you play, and I look forward to seeing you soon.